In the past, I've struggled with starting new Sims save files that I've gone on to fall in love with. My game launcher is a graveyard of abandoned saves. But after reflecting on my gameplay experiences in The Sims over the last 10 years, I think I've discovered the key to creating obsession-inducing legacy households. So today, let me walk you through my 3-step process to designing a new legacy household in The Sims 3 with intention. This process blends gameplay and story-driven approaches to playing the game and could absolutely be tweaked and applied to The Sims 4 or even Sims 1 or 2. My mission here is to help you find meaningful and fulfilling gameplay in whatever iteration you are playing. You may want to grab a pen and paper or a notes app on your phone or something to follow along, and if you do, feel free to share your ideas and stories below. Just so we're all on the same page off the bat, at its core, the Legacy Challenge has you start with one sim living on one huge lot with just around about 1,300 simoleons in your pocket, unless you're starting entirely rags to riches style, but more on that later. Your goal is to work your way through 10 generations, hopefully building some wealth and notoriety along the way. So what's the point of starting one of these challenges with intention then? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure I'm not the only one who is familiar with that guilt-ridden graveyard of abandoned saves lurking on our game launchers. In my experience, starting a new legacy save with intention was what has kept me playing the same game for over a year now. Even before I'd created my previous founder in Cass, I'd already developed an emotional connection to them because I'd put the time into thinking about their backstory and personality. Creating them visually was just the cherry on top in the process of breathing life into them. With those abandoned saves, on the other hand, I usually approached the process of setting up from the other way around, or I just wouldn't let myself get really into the nitty-gritty of who my founding Sims really were in the first place. I just ultimately didn't care about them that much. Next, in considering what types of gameplay you want to explore beforehand, you are drawing yourself a map, or at least a rough one, that will guide you through this new story. It's absolutely fine if you have some blank or blurry spots on it, but you aren't just going in blind. That way, you're helping to ward off some of that decision fatigue, which can pop up when playing super open world games like The Sims sometimes, where you have so many options that you can make that you end up doing nothing because it can get a little bit overwhelming. So with our what's and why's established, let's get into the how of setting up a new legacy in The Sims 3 with intention. I think that for most effective results, these 3 steps should be completed before you even start up your game. Again, think about putting together the map before we get in the driver's seat and turn on the engine. So for step 1, we're going to focus on the broad gameplay themes that we want to explore in the first generation. The overarching question we are considering here is quite simply, what do I fancy playing for the next little while? This can be deceptively tricky to answer though, so let's break it down into a few more questions to get the brain juices flowing. So firstly, have I bought any new packs or store content or installed any mods recently that I haven't explored a ton? Have I added any new worlds to my game recently that I haven't used? Are there any aspects of the packs I've had for a while, or even the base game, that I'm still unfamiliar with? Are there any challenges / aspects of challenges that I may want to incorporate into at least the initial part of this legacy? Then, as this is an intentional process, there are 2 questions I want you to ask yourself after you have decided on the broad gameplay themes you'll be exploring. So firstly, if you've chosen a gameplay direction that you've played multiple times before, is there a new spin that you could bring to this time around? Lastly, why have you landed on this legacy gameplay design overall? This isn't meant to be interrogatory in any way. Your answer can literally be as simple as, because I bloody want to. But this is just a way of getting some reflection going and hopefully aiding us in avoiding those common comfort blanket gameplay directions that we can fall into and that we can get bored of quickly if we're not careful. To help guide you through this process, I wanted to share my own plans for each of these steps, as I've just started a new legacy myself. That's what footage has been playing on in the background of this video so far. So over a year or 2 ago, I bought the pets expansion and a good few pieces of gardening / farmy themed store content that I haven't really played around with. And although World Adventures is one of my favorite packs, I've never really explored the nectar making skill. And similarly, although I've often dabbled in gardening, I want to dive deep into the mechanics around that skill because I think they have quite a lot of depth there. Now, usually I always start a new save file in a rags to riches style where you literally start with 0 money and an entirely empty lot. So I'll be doing that for this legacy. But to make this a bit more challenging, I'm gonna start with a dog. So I'll need to take care of them, bringing a little bit more urgency to getting some money and getting set up a little bit sooner. As for my why behind all of this, firstly, I just finished watching the newest season of Clarkson's Farm on Amazon Prime. While I know Jeremy Clarkson is a bit of a tool, I grew up in a rural area in the south of England, not too far from Diddley Scott Farm. So although I've never worked a field in my life or even touched a tractor, I don't think, it got me feeling a little bit nostalgic. I may not live in the South English countryside anymore, where I could regularly listen to my architect grandfather complaining about the decisions of the local planning committee around the Sunday dinner table. But hey, maybe I could recreate just a smidge of that in The Sims. Going back to my metaphor from earlier, now we have the general outline added to our map. We are now going to figure out who it is that is going to be following it and executing on the gameplay ideas we've come up with. To start, don't worry about your Sims traits or stuff like that. That comes with step 3. For right now, treat them like a character in a book. For the more creatively inclined, this question might be quite easy. However, I need a bit more to chew on in areas like this, so let's consider, firstly, will your Sim take any visual and or personality related inspiration from any characters you already know of? If so, how? Don't worry about plagiarism, this is The Sims. H-Bomber Guy's not coming for you. Conversely, if you're gonna go the homebrew route, how will your Sim look aesthetically and what will the key facets of their personality be? Regardless of which direction you choose, what is their backstory? How did they get to this point that they're at right now as you launch into live mode for the first time? Considering all of this so far, what are their key motivations right at this beginning point? Again, because I can be creatively challenged at times, I decided to take inspiration from a character in a show that my best mate and I are working through at the moment, and that is Poldark. Now, I hate the character of Ross Poldark, but I am obsessed with Caroline Penvennon. So she was who I picked to be the base of my founder on an aesthetic and personality level. But you may notice that during the cast process, she was serving country Barbie. So the character of Caroline Penvennon is very witty. She comes from a wealthy family, so can be a little bit snobbish at times. During some of her early appearances in the show, she wears these amazing bright pink outfits, which really stand out against the subdued background of yieldy Cornwall. In creating my own adjusted backstory and motivations for her, I wanted my Sim, who I called Rose, to similarly come from a wealthy old money family. I'm not 100% sure what she did, but Rose went against the grain of her family expectations and basically decided to run away with nothing but a bag of clothes, some diamond earrings, and her doggo Horace, and the deed to a plot of land which she had been left by a distant family member who passed away some time ago. As for her motivations, she wants to strike out and make it on her own without the backing of her parents' riches. She's a determined queen. She has land, and she will leverage this to build her empire. For the final step, we are going to marry these plans so far with the more tangible aspects of the game itself. Let's break it down again. So for question 1, given the character we have taken inspiration from / created ourselves, what traits and lifetime wish would it make sense to give them in the game? Again, the key here is make sense rather than what traits do I want to give them to make the challenge / gameplay approach easier to complete. Remember, having a mix of good and quote unquote bad traits is a good way to keep things spicy. If you haven't already decided, what world would be best to play in that fits the Founder Sim's backstory and chosen gameplay direction? Taking into account both your chosen gameplay direction and the Sim's personality that you have created, how are you going to make money in this first generation? Again, considering all of these aspects, what skills and hobbies will your founder develop? And lastly, given the chosen gameplay style and your founder's motivations, what goals may you set up to guide your gameplay in this first generation? So given Rose's personality, backstory, and motivations, I went with the diva, hates children, dog lover, charismatic, and proper traits, and the living in the lap of luxury lifetime wish. Yes, it may have been easier to go with all of the green thumb, gatherer, angler, and loves the outdoors traits, but they don't make as much sense or align with the character that I've created. So I didn't pick them off the bat. That's not to say that I'm not aiming to buy some of them through the honorary degree lifetime reward that grants you extra traits. As I've never really played in it, I'm going to be using Appaloosa Plains to fit the farming aesthetic, and I'll be using all of the gardening and animal related means of making money that I can, as well as making money through, the land generally, so processing collectibles and nectar making. However, we love some diversified sims, so once Rose is established, she may do some glass blowing to make some jewelry for herself. As for goals, I'm determined to complete Rose's lifetime wish and to build up our gigantic lot into a ranch with farm tracks, orchards, cows, chickens, bees, horses, and maybe even a cow plant, ? Also, as is typical with a legacy, we of course need to find a partner and make some babies. So those are the steps that I have taken to start my new legacy save file with intention. But what do we do now? This process can be revisited towards the start of each new generation as your legacy challenge progresses. The only questions I would add here are, firstly, am I still satisfied / fulfilled with the current gameplay style which has guided the previous generation? If your answer is no, revisit some of the questions from step 1. Next, as you're not creating a new sim entirely from scratch in subsequent generations, how could you incorporate aspects of a sim's parentage / situation growing up into their personality? I would definitely still encourage you to take inspiration from existing characters here if that helps too. Then finally, considering these previous questions, follow step 3 more or less the same way as before to give your new generations a strong foundation. I hope this intentional method for approaching legacy challenges has been helpful. Again, if you try it out for yourself, I would love to hear what you come up with. But if you find yourself wondering how else you can keep gameplay fresh and exciting, check out this video on the screen for more tips. It was actually what inspired me to make this video today, which you'll notice if you go watch it. With that said though guys, I hope you have a great day and I'll see you again soon.